Hey there. It's me. Flat hair, don't care. Anyway, clearly didn't get that sorted out this morning in time. Groovy. I'm here. Thanks for waiting. Time flies when you run off your feet, hey? How's everyone doing? Make sure to say hi when you jump on. For those that for some reason don't know, my name is Lisa Westgate and I am the founder and creator of the Misfit Hub. Hey, Fiona Beamish. Good to see you. How are you? Hope you're well, loving life. Have you moved? Hopefully you've moved and you're settled in and you've got a home and you're nice and warm because it's freaking freezing here in Melbourne. Anyway, say hi when you jump on. Hi. Today, did you like my title? I think you liked it today. I got the feeling you liked it. Shout out to Kim, who specifically posted that she liked it. Right? Oh, finally, poor Marie. I'm so sorry, Marie. I know I torture you. Yes, and yes. Hey, Mel. Good. Thanks for saying hi as you jump on. Not warm. No, it's bloody freezing. Apologies to Marie. Sorry. Yes, look, I always come here straight off a meeting, to be honest. I jump straight out of a Zoom meeting and I come into here, and sometimes we run a little bit over in our meeting and I'm always like, I've got to go to a live because I know that you guys are waiting. So I apologize for being a few minutes late on occasion. I really am trying my best. So today we're going to talk about how to make anxiety your bitch, right? And let me know if you really resonated with Eminem or with me, talking about his experience of getting up on stage and being nervous in terms of performance. It's okay, I thought it was me, lol. No, it's not you, it was me. It's always me. You're perfect, just as you are, my darling. Or with me sharing my story of my big, mega, like really mega panic attack that I had at a major shopping centre here in Melbourne 8 years ago. 8 years ago now. So my daughter at the time, who really wanted to just go and see a movie with her friends and kind of get dropped off and no big deal, was 14 and she's now 22. So a long time ago now. And it was actually really interesting to reflect on the anxiety that I used to have. -2 is disgusting, Marie. That should be illegal. It's not. That's horrible. Sending you warm hugs. I was talking to a client this morning as well about a tremor. So a tremor coming from physical anxiety. So the physical effects of anxiety. I used to have a really bad tremor, and my husband used to heap a shit on me about it all the time. And it was great actually to be able to, because I was jumping on here and talking to you guys about this topic this morning or this afternoon, is it was actually really great to reflect and recognize for myself, like, oh, I don't do that anymore, or oh, I don't have that anymore. Aside from the weather being cold, it could have been the middle of summer, and I had cold hands and cold feet. And again, that's one of the physical aspects of, anxiety, trauma, mental health challenges, right? So I know that you know that these labels of conditions and collection of things do not just exist in our head, right? It's this false narrative that mental health only exists between your ears. There are absolutely physiological, body-based symptoms and aspects of this, right? So let me know if you're resonating with the tremor or cold hands and feet, all through the year, regardless of the weather. gut issues, right? Really significant gut issues. Our gut is deeply, deeply interlinked with our mental health and our well-being, but especially in relation to anxiety and stress, right? Let me know if you resonate with that. This is probably, we could really get into the realms of too much information. Speaking of cold, I'm just going to close the window. Interesting. Always have cold feet. Yeah. Yeah. I sleep with socks on. I used to sleep with socks on all the time. So, not going to the toilet enough, going to the toilet too much, going to the toilet every time you eat something. There is a big relationship between gut health and mental health. Now, modern science is now releasing studies about this, and they're, and this is why and whatever. But if you've lived it, like I've lived it, the response is often like, oh yeah, no duh, right? We know because we live it, right? Certain things make it better or worse, sure. But ultimately, if you're holding on to a lot of stress, to anxiety, if you are suppressing emotions, hands up who's really good at suppressing emotions. Where do they go when you suppress them, I wonder, right? They don't go into your legs. They go into your gut, right? They sit in your gut and they cause fucking problems in there, right? They go into your lower back and they cause problems there. Yeah, preach. Okay, so this anxiety thing, right? This stress thing, this stuck thing, this is not just about mental health, right? It's not just things happen in the squishy bit between your ears. This is a full body life experience, right? So there's a few things that I wanted to cover today in talking about anxiety. And the reason that we're talking about anxiety is because I put out a poll a few weeks ago, and I asked in the group what would be helpful for me to do a live on. And one of them was like tips around managing anxiety. And that won the poll out of a few options. And so here I am, because I know it's a big thing. There's a couple of points I want to make about anxiety. We need to define what it is we're talking about, okay? So exam time at the moment. Yeah, that's contextualized, Mel, right? So let's do this in an order, right? There is a clinical, psychological, psychiatric DSM definition of anxiety, as in generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder. PTSD, I'm pretty sure, actually comes under the DSM under anxiety disorders. So there are like pathological anxiety disorders, right? Then there is like anxiety / nervousness, okay? And that to me is, I put things in there that are contextual. So Mel's coming up to exams, or she's in the middle of exams. That's contextual. If you are about to go on stage and speak in public and you want to get it right and do a good job, right? You're going to be a little nervous. Maybe you're feeling anxious, right? Maybe anxious is the label that we're going to put on the feeling of wanting to do a good job, right? And people put the label anxious on that. Ooh, I always get anxious before I speak publicly. Is it anxious, right? Which has a negative kind of connotation. Or is it nervous or excited or anticipatory or, invested because you want to do a good job? If you've ever had to do a public speaking thing where you really don't give a shit to the people you're talking to, you're not being nervous, right? Because you're just going to get up and say whatever and it doesn't matter because who cares? right? You're not going to be anxious or nervous, right? Because you don't care. So that feeling prior to an exam, because you want to do a good job, public speaking, because you want to do well, you got to show up maybe to an official event of some sort, so a job interview or testifying in a court case, jury duty, I don't know, something official, right? And you want to present well, you want to get your points across, you want to whatever, right? Anything that's got significance or weight or importance to it for you is going to elicit these nervous feelings, these excited feelings, this anxiety that's contextualized in the box, in the event, in the occasion that it is, right? Do you have to MC a wedding? Are you giving a best man or a maid of honor speech, right? Things where you give a shit about what it is you're doing are going to elicit these feelings that can be labeled as anxiety, right? Exam anxiety, performance anxiety, before people go on stage and all that sort of stuff, right? That's normal. That's being a human being, in my humble opinion, right? That's not a pathology. That's not an anxiety disorder. That's because you care as a person about what you're about to do, right? So that's your humanness. And I was speaking to a client this morning about this, right? I think there are elements of our humanness that are being pathologized. I'll give you another example. I've shared this story before. I had a client many years ago who worked in the forensic mental health space, which means mental health within the prison system, right? With criminally unwell people, and this client of mine had a relationship with someone that he was in charge of, and was playing cards or a board game or chess or something with this person regularly, and then got a promotion and had to be in charge, took on a higher level of responsibility. And as part of that, read the files of all the people housed in that area that they were now responsible for, read the file of this individual that they had been, casually relating to, and read what they did to actually be in there. Now, remember, these people are sort of like criminals, but too unwell to go to jail. And came to me to a session that we had together and said, I'm nervous. My anxiety's kicking in again. And I said, tell me about your anxiety. Well, now I know what this person did. I don't want to be around them because it was very cruel and very, awful, nasty behavior like that, obvious and criminal. And that's why they're in there. And my client was like, I don't want to be around them. I don't want to play chess with them anymore. But I feel bad because they haven't done anything different. I just have new information. I'm like, yeah, you're a person, right? You're a human being. And human beings are designed to assess threat. You now have more information that you have readjusted your relationship to this person. You don't want to be around them. That's not an anxiety disorder. That's survival instinct, right? You've now learned some information about this person. You don't want to be near them. And so what I find is I've had clients before that have been previously diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Maybe they're on medication for it. And every time they get contextually nervous around a situation like that, like I've just explained, or around exams, or around meeting the in-laws, or, whatever it is, a contextual nervousness, they go, oh, my anxiety's back. My anxiety's flared up again. Well, hang on a minute. Hang on a second. Is it a pathological anxiety or is it being a human being? Remember when we, I've totally lost my train of thought. I read Mel's message and comment and it's gone. I'm gonna deal with this. Yes, So I'm struggling with the feeling that brings me back to the previous anxiety that I've worked through. Does that make sense? Haha, yes. Yeah, 100%, right? So let's talk about the elements of anxiety, okay? Because what happens is we get these labels, right? We get a big bucket and we go, this is anxiety and everything in here is anxiety. But it's actually not. We need to break it down a little bit more, right? So anxiety encompasses anxious thoughts, okay? And everyone has their own kind of version of anxious thoughts. My version of anxious thoughts that are very few and far between nowadays, but used to be very common. My anxious thought pattern, what my very clever brain decides to throw me and go, hey, have you thought about this? Is typically catastrophic. So I have catastrophic anxious thoughts, which is like, what is the worst potential scenario my brain can come up with? And it goes, yeah, but at least it's not this. And then it goes, boom, and it gives me like the worst thing you can imagine, right? Oh, thanks, brain, right? That's really awesome. I actually didn't want to think about that. And so we have an anxious thought, right? So let's say catastrophically, I used to think when I lived where I used to live, I used to have catastrophic thoughts about a tree crashing down on our house because we lived in a very bushy area, right? So every time it was windy, I would have a catastrophic thought about a tree coming down on the house. So you have the thought, right? What if, right? Because it's always a what if. What if a tree comes crashing down on the house? Now, a thought is just a thought. And this is what I spoke this morning to my dear client about, right? A thought is a thought. It has no power until you feed it. And thoughts feed on feelings, emotions, right? So the thought is a thought. It's an anxious thought, right? What if? And usually negative. And like, I don't ever go, what if I won the lottery, and consider that an anxious thought, right? It's always a negative, like, and then we feed it and it feeds on emotions and we go, oh my God, what if that, right? And what does that mean about me? And then what would happen? And we get emotionally engaged. We invest in the thought. And that's what leads to that spiral, right? And you chase the thought all the way to its end, which for me, with my catastrophic thoughts, was usually a crying, snot-filled, bawling ball on the floor, right? Because if I chase the thought, what if the tree falls on the house? And then what would happen with the kids? And then, right? And my brain goes, and the more that I would invest emotionally into, oh my God, how would I deal with that? And that was terrible. It's the emotional response to the thought that gives it power. Let me know if this is making sense, okay? Because the thought itself is just a thought. It's just a collection of words. You have 70, 100 million, I don't know, that's not an official number, thoughts a day, right? But it's only the ones that we feed with emotions that comes from here and comes from here that will take off, right? And that get power. So there are anxious thoughts that we feed with our emotions. Yep, says Mel. Yep. And then there is anxiety in the body, right? And I started today talking about the tremors and the cold hands and feet. So yes, to come back to your question, Mel, or your comment, I'm struggling with the feeling that brings me back to the anxious thought, is how I'm reading this, that I've worked through. So you've worked through the anxious thought. Tell me if this is correct, Mel. So you've worked through the anxious thought and the scenario or the situation or whatever it was, and you've sort of put that to bed. But then when that familiar feeling that was connected to that returns, the thought returns. Is that what you mean in your comment? Let me know if that's correct. So the body-based responses, they can come from other sources, right? They come from other places and from other causes. But when they come back, it's like, oh, this is how I felt when I used to think about that. This is how I felt when I used to have anxiety about. Does that mean the anxiety's back? No, it doesn't. It just means you're feeling the feeling, right? But now there's an attachment to it. Yep, says Mel. Awesome. When Mel puts one word comments, I know that I'm hitting it for her, okay? So yeah, exactly. And then what do? You get anxious about the anxiety, right? And then you get anxious. Yeah, you get anxious about like, does this mean this feeling has returned here, here, and here in my gut? If that's coming back, does that mean this thing that I thought I'd fucking worked on is not fucking cleared? Does that mean that I haven't made the progress that I thought I had? Does that mean blah, blah, blah? Does that mean blah, 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 right? And so we can get anxious about anxiety. We can get depressed about anxiety. We can get anxious about depression, right? So it's almost less the thing that is going on, right? The feeling in your gut or whatever it is, right? The thing that's come up. It's less about that and more about how do you then feel about that? What have you attached to that? What have you made that mean? We as human beings are meaning-making machines, okay? We have to have things mean something, right? It's very challenging for us when something, an event or whatever it is meaningless, right? We really struggle with that as human beings. And that's why that's part of the challenge with trauma, right? So if something happens, for example, my sexual assault, right? If that doesn't mean anything, if it just happened and it's meaningless, that it's harder for us to resolve and bookend and sort of file away events or situations or thoughts if we don't understand what it means, right? It's really important to us as human beings. We're deeply wired for meaning, all right? If you don't believe me, I'll give you an example. And again, I've used this before. When you send someone a message and then they message back, and then you send a message and they message back, and then you send a message and then the three dots come up. And then the three dots go away. And then it takes about 10 seconds? And then you've created a meaning around that, right? Oh my God, I shouldn't have said that thing, or I shouldn't have done this, and maybe it didn't come across well on text, right? And we immediately start creating meaning around what it means when those three dots come up and the three dots disappear, right? On your Messenger or your iPhone or whatever, right? You do this. I know you do this. Okay? Because we want to create meaning. And what it actually means is they've gone to the loo and they're going to respond to your message in a minute, right? That's probably what it means. Or they left their phone in the car and they'll be back, or, whatever. They've run in to get bread and milk at the shops and they'll come back to your message in a moment. But we create meaning. So it's important to understand, one, that we are meaning-making machines. Oh, absolutely. We can deliberately shoot ourselves in the foot so we can make it make sense. Oh my God, we'll cut off a limb to make it make sense, right? We just need to understand why. What does that mean? How does it make sense? How do I make this make sense, right? Even if it's the most ridiculous, unlikely scenario, we'll go, well, yeah, I mean, that, it's probably, it seems unlikely, but that makes the most sense, right? And we'll grab it and we'll latch onto it and we'll keep it as our very, very own. So one, it's important to understand that we're programmed to have things make sense, right? As Mel said, make sense, have meaning, have purpose, right? We need that. We're looking for that. And if it's not there, we'll create it, won't we? Right? We'll make it make sense. Two, thoughts are just thoughts, right? They're just collections of words. They're just thoughts. How many thoughts do you reckon you have a day? Fucking heaps. Why are these ones sticking out and being important? Is because, number three, we're feeding it with emotion. We're engaging with it. We're interacting with it, right? We're involving ourselves in that thought. Oh God, what if that thought's correct? What if it's a load of shit, right? But we don't take it that way. So how does this empower you, right? Because this is my whole fucking deal, right? I want you to be empowered to know that there are points at which you have agency. You have control. There is points at which you can shift things. You don't have to just ride this fucking roller coaster like a passenger. You can take the steering wheel and be in charge, okay? If a roller coaster had a steering wheel. You know what I mean? I'm always mixing my metaphors. You love it, all right? The point at which you can take charge in this process is to recognize it's just a thought. I have heaps of those. That's a shit one. Repeat after me. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. You are not your thoughts, right? You are not your anxious thoughts. You don't have to engage with them. You don't have to feed them, right? It's just a thought. Cool? So, management. How can we manage anxiety? And this is, people used to come to me years ago. I'm looking for someone to help me manage my anxiety. I go, okay, cool. There's things you can do to manage your anxiety. Personally, what I found best was to not have anxiety. On occasion, I have an anxious thought, like I said, tends to be catastrophic, and I go, oh, that's an unhelpful thought. Thanks. And then I get curious about what led to that. Why am I having that? Usually, I'm exhausted, I'm run down, I haven't been looking after myself, I haven't been eating properly, I'm tired, and my brain goes, well, could be worse, at least it's not, and it gives me the most awful thing it can come up with at the moment. Great, thanks very much for that. Unhelpful. I will address some of these factors that I can address. I'm going to have a good meal. I'm going to have a nap. And then I'm probably going to feel better. And then you're going to stop sending me these unhelpful thoughts. Cool, thank you. So 1, with regard to the anxious thoughts, recognize that they are thoughts. 2, for your body, to manage anxiety in your body, right? Breathing shallowly, cold hands and feet, tremor. There's a few things that I would suggest in terms of management. 1 is I want you to think about a lion chasing a gazelle in Africa. Okay, so there is a prey animal, ding, da, ding, da, ding, and it's hopping along quite happily in its African savanna. And the lion starts chasing it, right? And the gazelle goes, fuck, and it takes off, right? They're really fast. And it takes off, and then it like hides around a rock or something, right? Gets to a point, and it goes, holy shit, I nearly got eaten by a fucking lion, right? And the lion goes, he's gone. And he turns around and goes back to his pride, okay? And the gazelle, right, hands up, all the David Attenborough fans, what does the gazelle do after almost being eaten by a lion? What do? Have you seen this? Watch these documentaries, right? This is what mammals do, right? This is what warm-blooded mammals do, including us, right? The gazelle it's got 4 legs on the ground, and what does it do? It shakes, right? They vibrate, they shake, they tremor. Holy shit, that was really scary. Fucking lion nearly ate me. Have you ever come across somebody post car accident, right? Unscathed, not a mark on them, everybody's fine, and they're sitting on the side of the curb, and what are they doing? They're shaking, right? They're vibrating, they're tremoring. Let me know if you've seen this, right? Mel, I know you're getting around in ambulances. Hey, just a shout out to everyone that's watching, by the way. There's a bunch of you watching. Feel free to say hi in the comments, right? Mel, you've got ambulance experience. Marie, I know you have emergency services experience, right? Tell me if you've seen this. Post big accident adrenaline rush shaking, right? So just like the animal that nearly got eaten by a lion, just like the person that gets out of the car accident goes, oh, fuck, I thought we were going to fucking die, right? And they're shaking. Why are they shaking? Because as mammals, this is how we discharge the energy, all right? We've had a big adrenaline boost, and then it's got to go somewhere, okay? So to manage anxiety in your body, even if this is a chronic, not an acute situation, allow the tremor. Shake. Shake on purpose. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. One, I'm going to put it in the comments. One way is called TRE. Let me do it like that. All right. So, yes, it's an automatic response. This is how we're wired as mammals, right? This is an innate part of being a human being, a part of being a mammal, right? Just like the gazelle that nearly got eaten by the lion. So one is called TRE, right? Which is called trauma release exercises. Google it, YouTube it. Essentially, it's shaking on purpose. The other way that I quite like is, I'm also going to put in the comments, this is called dancing. Yeah, you heard me, dancing, all right? Dancing around in the kitchen, putting music on, and getting around like a goofball somewhere in your house, right? You can draw the curtains so no one can see if you like, right? Moving your body. Now, most of you have only ever seen me on Zoom, but I promise you if you saw me in real life, you would understand clearly I'm not a runner, all right? But for some people, running is a thing that they do that also helps with this discharge of energy, all right? Running, dancing in the kitchen, all right? There's all sorts of dancing therapies. I met a lady yesterday who teaches Koya, Qoya, Koya. Let's all put that in here too, right? Let's check that out, okay? It's a dancing modality, right? It's about getting you back in touch with your body and discharging the energy. This is normal, right? What happens if you try and suppress that tremor? It comes back, right? Because the energy still needs to be discharged. So in terms of the physiological anxiety response, move. Your body wants to move, allow it to move. There's nothing wrong with it. It's normal, okay? It's a normal trauma response. Even if your trauma was way back when, but if you haven't allowed it out, it's still sitting in there, all right? So turn the music up and go for a boogie. Other things you can do in an acute situation, I quite like the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Hi, 5 Rhythms Dance is good too. Google Gabriel Roth. Awesome. Thank you so much, Maya. That's awesome. I love that. I know you like a bit of a boogie, Maya. I'm sure. Thank you for, if anyone else has any other resources that they have found are useful for this, please put them in the comments, right? This is a community, not a lecture, right? Put them in. My dog is overexcited. He starts sneezing. I love it. And what's sneezing? Sneezing's a release, right? It's a getting it out of my body. What's crying? Crying is a release, right? It's a discharge of emotion. It's a releasing things from the body, right? This is a good thing, right? Sneezing and crying, it's all getting it out. All right, it's okay because we know, our system knows we're not meant to hold on to this shit. So just quickly, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method is for an acute anxious episode. All right. So like I described in the description for this event, is like when I was having my meltdown outside of the cinema, right? So it's name, I didn't know this then, is name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And again, it's a process of coming back into your body, out of the thoughts, back into your body, and being present in the now. Okay, that's what that process is for. And that's for a really acute kind of, panic attack style situation. So we've talked about what anxiety is. We've talked about what it isn't, the difference between anxious thoughts, anxious body. We've talked about pathological anxiety versus contextual anxiety. And the one last thing that I want to talk to you about, and I want you to put the word healing in the comments if you want to have a chat about this, right? Healing is, I cry in intense situations, would love not to. I'll have to get Kate Reeves to have a talk to you about crying. I'll connect to you. Yeah, again, that's really normal. It's a release, right? It's a release of emotion. It's a release. There's so much going on. You need to release. So, healing. Thank you, darling. I will reach out to you. We'll have a chat. We've talked a lot about anxiety. We've talked about some ways to manage anxiety. So there's releasing, there's dancing, and these are sort of more ongoing things. There's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I can't do that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in the acute setting. But ultimately, the best thing that I have found to manage anxiety is to not have anxiety, is to not have to manage it, is to heal it. And if you think about when this started, how long have you been having these feelings? How long have you had anxious thoughts? These will probably, for a lot of us, go way back. Way back. Early childhood. Maybe even before. When I examined my anxiety that was connected to my PTSD, and I did, I had the process facilitated for me that I now facilitate for others. And I was the client. I actually discovered that my anxiety, what I was experiencing, the anxious thoughts, the all this stuff in the body, cold hands, cold feet, the tremoring, the overstimulated, too much, going on, all that. Absolutely generational too. That's exactly what I'm about to share with you, Mel. Not only was it modeled for me by members of my family growing up, anxious, anxiety, anxious thoughts, anxious words, concerns, worries, right? Yes, it was modeled for me by members of my family who, didn't know any better and they were doing the best they could. But it was actually passed down to me while I was in the womb, right? When my mother was pregnant with me, right? She was anxious. And where am I getting my blood supply? Where am I getting my hormones? Where am I getting all my chemical signals? Where am I getting the baseline for my ability to regulate all of that? When I'm, currently part of her, from her. So what I actually discovered was that my anxiety wasn't mine. I had adopted it from her to come down in that blood supply through the umbilical cord and I had taken it on as my own and I had grown up with it, and then I got to my 30s and assumed that I had an anxiety problem, when in actual fact it wasn't mine to begin with. But what did I do? I created meaning. It had to make sense. How did I make it make sense? Because of my life experiences, because of my mental health situation, because of my this, because of my that. Oh, shit is right. So what if it's not yours to begin with? What if you are carrying around someone else's anxiety? And if it's not yours, would you like to put it down? If you want to put it down, put healing in the comments. Mel, I'll have a chat to you about your daughter. Absolutely. I was pregnant with PTSD. I'll say that again. I was pregnant with PTSD. So, have I given anxiety, etc., to my kid, who at the time was my unborn child? And if I have, does it serve any purpose? Is there any benefit for me or for him to start laying layers of guilt and shit on myself for it? Does that help anything? And the answer is, fuck no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Gaining awareness and understanding about all of this, and the reason that I want to bring it to you, right, is not ammunition for you to beat yourself up, right? And I want to make that very clear. And this is not just for anyone watching. This is for everybody who ever watches this, right? This is not ammunition for you to beat yourself up. I'm not giving you something else to flog yourself with about being a terrible parent or not being a good person or blah blah, or whatever other bullshit stories you're going to come up with, okay? Because the absolute truth of the matter is that my mother was doing her fucking best when she was pregnant with me, and she was anxious. And I got some of that. And then when I lived my life and I, had to manage this or whatever I was doing with it, I was doing the best I could too. And when I was pregnant with my son, I was doing my fucking best too, right? And maybe he got some crazy ass hormones and chemicals and shit, which makes it difficult now for him to regulate, right? But it doesn't help him, and it doesn't help me for me to feel like a bucket of shit about it. What it does is give us an awareness of one of the contributing factors to what's going on with him, and it makes me very committed to supporting him in helping him work out how he can release that and feel better and function as best as possible, right? That's where the energy goes. The energy goes into helping him heal. It's a complete waste of energy for me to just feel like a bucket of shit, okay? Because I didn't know any better, and I certainly didn't do it with malicious intent, right? But what it means is when we heal, it helps them heal, right? So if you're seeing this in your kids, if you're seeing this in your partner, this is an opportunity to create positive ripples, right? Is we can heal ourselves, and then the people around us can be healed as well. I sound like a fucking evangelist, right? But it's true. So this isn't about me going, hey, guess what you did to somebody else? Not at all. This is about an awareness, and the energy, the best place for any energy that you have around this is not in guilt or blame or shame or any of that crap. It's about how can we heal? How can we now heal now that we know this? How can we move forward? And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in breaking this cycle, then put healing in the comments. If you're watching the replay, put #replay and put healing in the comments, and I'll reach out to you and we'll have a chat. And we can talk not just about anxiety, about what else is going on in your life that you're just sick of. And it's time to let go. And you're ready. And you're ready for the better version of you to come along. As usual, I want to thank everybody who's come on live. Yes, Marie was talking about that in relation to dog training, same with animals, right? We like to think we're very different, but when it comes to the behavior of mammals, right, we are animals. We're maybe higher up on the the hierarchy that we created, that we drew. I wonder if dogs had created the hierarchy. They'd probably put themselves at the top, right? Yeah, I've got a human. They walk around and pick up my crap for me, right? Pretty sure they think they're in charge of that relationship. We're humans, we're animals, we're mammals, and those human responses need to be taken into account when you're judging yourself for how you should be able to live your life. Also, stop using the word should, all of you, from now on, from today onwards. Don't use the word should. It's bullshit. I hope that's been helpful. Definitely, lol. Yeah, they're like, yeah, I got a guy. He does that, right? I got a lady. She walks around after me and picks it up. All right. I hope that's been helpful. I hope this has given you some insights or an aha or a penny drop moment or something that you can take and go, right, even if it is just this practice of recognizing what is a thought. Oh, that's just a thought. Okay. I don't have to engage with that. I don't have to invest in it. I don't have to feed that. That's just a thought. I'm anxious about this speech I have to do. Okay. I'm anxious because I want it to go well, because I want to do a good job, because it matters to me. It's important. Mel says, mind blown. I'll reach out to you, darling, in a moment. Hi, you're not even #replay. You're here live. Hello, Tegan. I am just finishing up though, so you will have to go back and watch it. I've run long today. We're at 47 minutes, but I think we've really covered some big stuff, and I hope that you can take little pieces out of it, that there's something that lands for you, either an intervention, a moment that you can give yourself back some agency over how you respond to the thoughts. Hello, Kerry, darling. Sorry, I missed most of it. I'll go back when the kids get into bed. Absolutely. Yes, that's when I'm prime scrolling time. 100%. I hope you find it valuable. And drop back in here and drop your comments as you go. Big love hearts to you, Kerry, as well. Lovely to have you on. Yeah, when you guys are watching the replay, drop your comments in here as if you're watching it live, because I do see them, and I'll come back and pop in and reply to your comments as well. So big shout out to everyone who jumped on, including you, Tegan, Kerry, Mel, Marie, Fiona, I tagged Kate, Maya. It was lovely to have you here as well, and reach out. Drop a healing in the comments if you would like to talk about how you can shift this, how you can heal, because you can, and make anxiety your bitch. I love you all. You're incredible. Please let me know if there is something else that you would like me to do a live on. I want to be of service. I want to be giving you guys information and talking about topics that are important to you as well. That'd be awesome. Have an amazing Tuesday. I had to check on the computer what day it was, because who knows. Have an awesome Tuesday, and I'll talk to you soon. And those of you who have dropped a healing in the comments, I'll reach out to you privately as soon as possible. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now, legends.